Hey there. Welcome to Voracious Readers Book Club. This week we're taking Patrick O'Brian's Master and Commander. These are my thoughts on Chapter 1. So this is going to be one take, and I'm just going to practice and get better and better as the chapters go along at this video format. So here we go. First thing I noticed in the first chapter was the characters in this story. Very multi-dimensional. They're funny, they're witty, they're not always telling the truth. So the first two main characters that we meet are Jack Aubrey and Maturin, Stephen Maturin, or Maturin. I don't know how you say his name. Anyways, so the scene opens up. They're at this concert, and they're both kind of enraptured by this music that's playing. So that's kind of the first formings of this friendship. If you've seen the movie, you know that they've kind of bonded over their love of music. But they're meeting each other for the first time in this scene, and it's kind of this funny moment because Jack Aubrey's he's always in the ocean on his ships, in the Navy or whatever. And so he doesn't really know how to conduct himself in this, classy sort of society. So while the music's playing, he's kind of getting into it. I kind of imagine him like headbanging, but he's not really. He's just kind of like moving around and being impolite. And he gets a nudge in his side by Stephen Maturin telling him to to not act like a jackass. And that's the first scene of the movie. Or of the book. I'm not going to go through each and every scene. I'm just going to talk about the main things that I noticed. So the next thing I wrote down is how fast-paced this story takes place. Some books, there's a long introduction, getting to know the characters, blah, 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 blah. This one, it's almost in a few pages, and the story's kind of like rushing you along because we know that Jack Aubrey he longs to be at sea, and we learned that he wanted to get a command of a ship for a long time, and he was decorated in battle. I think at the Battle of the Nile or something like that. And he thought he should have had captain of a ship by now, but other people around him who have better connections in the Navy, I guess the whole administration, have gotten command of ships before him, and so he's kind of he has this restless energy. After that first music scene, he goes back to his where he's staying, his lodgings, I guess, and he gets a letter, and basically it details that he's going to have command of this ship called the Sophie, and that he's got to, outfit the ship. He's got to get people and crew, and that he's going to be. I guess he doesn't have the specific orders yet, but that he'll be out at sea pretty soon. And that's just within the few pages. So we're already kind of getting this excitement of joining this kind of fast-paced, chaotic sort of scene in the Navy. And this is during the Napoleonic Wars, which I'm not super familiar with, but I know it's England versus France, I think. And yeah, the setting, it takes place, I think they're in Spain, off the coast of Spain. So, Next thing I noticed was actually some points of confusion for me. First of all, we should talk about Patrick O'Brian's writing style. It's actually pretty... it's enjoyable to read, but there's a lot of words that I don't understand, and it has like this. It's very musical. It's got this kind of like all the dialogue is very witty, and it's like kind of this old-fashioned sort of style of writing, I guess. But you get used to it after a while, and you don't have to know like every single thing about what's going on. Like when they describe the ships and how they're getting the ships ready to go out to sea. I didn't know all of that vocabulary and stuff, but that's not really the point of the story, because as we learn in chapter 2, which I'll talk about in the next video, you know, Stephen Maturin doesn't really know much either. So he's kind of that character that we can relate to, um, in not knowing all this whole world that the author's bringing us into. Okay, fourth thing I want to note is that there are some uh, leadership themes in this book, which also they bring out in the movie, or they highlight in the movie as well. So now that Jack Aubrey is becoming captain of the Sophie, he's not part of the crew anymore per se. He's like this disconnected from the crew, um, and they go over that theme in the movie as well. But yeah, it's kind of going over. He feels it's sort of loneliness of not being part of the crew anymore, but he's totally happy and like ecstatic almost, because he finally gets to command a ship and the cost of not being part of the crew or of being a little lonely is well worth that price to pay. And I also think that's kind of why he invites Stephen Maturin to be part of the crew, because he's a civilian, but they're both kind of equals in society, I guess. And so yeah, I think he just wants a friend on the ship for their first journey. Um, yeah, so talking a little bit more about uh, Aubrey and Steven's relationship. So the scene after they are at that concert, they meet the next morning at this coffee house, and Aubrey's like, "I'm sorry for misbehaving, whatever," um, and uh, Maturin invites him to have some coffee, and they talk about a variety of things. And Maturin has got this weird history where he lived in Spain, I guess, for a while. But they come kind of from totally different backgrounds. But then they end up talking about music again. So that's kind of what they bond over and become friends about. Um, yeah, two more things to note. The So he gets on board the Sophie to inspect her and get her ready for setting sail, and we get to know the crew. So the crew is described as being very comfortable around the ship, but there's also this more this humor is coming through, especially during the inspection. So Captain Aubrey's walking around the ship and making sure everything's put where it's supposed to be, and everything seems in order. But then Patrick O'Brian, the author, takes us to he describes what the crew has hidden all over the ship. So there's like stuff that people throw behind, just get it out of the way where he can't see it. There's women on board the ship that aren't supposed to be there. So yeah, it's creating more of that dynamic between the crew and the officers. And yeah, the last part is that so Captain Aubrey he wants to get the ship ready to go set sail, and the first thing that he does is that he wants these big 12-pound, I guess the really large cannons for the ship. And everyone notes that the ship is like weighed down in the water because there's way too many people, and he's trying to put all these guns on the ship. And when they're going out for their test run, I guess, to make sure so that Captain Aubrey can get comfortable with the ship, things are breaking, I guess, and they can't maneuver in the water and stuff like that. So that's how the chapter ends. Is that they're done testing the ship, and it's not gonna hold these 12-pound guns, and so they're just trying to get it ready to set sail. So yeah, I guess in the next chapter it's gonna open with a dinner scene with Aubrey and Maturin. But yeah, so these are my thoughts on chapter 1. I'm going to just try to keep talking about each chapter as we go along, and just try to analyze the books a little more deeply, because I like to read a lot, but sometimes I find that I'm just reading for entertainment and not necessarily to get everything out of the books. So this is my attempt at doing that. So yeah, I'll be back for chapter 2. Thanks.